Welcome back. I'm excited today to have part two of Peter Sisson that we had on the show a few weeks back with Certify It. We broke up his episode into two because I felt like there was a lot of important things that he was talking about, but we ended up breaking it up over a couple of months here. So to bring you up to speed, Certify It is a platform that helps stop deepfakes. Peter's been around the AI game for a very long time. And in this second part of the interview, I think you're going to find some interesting perspectives and dimensions. And I think we both get really excited here as the episode goes on because we start to talk more philosophically and theoretically about how AI is going to affect everything that we know and do. All right, here we go. Peter Sisson, Certify It. Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Convergence. I've got Peter Sisson still with me as sort of a part two here because we just wanted to talk off the cuff about AI, where it's going, some of the things that we're seeing out in the marketplace. As you all know, it has been a wild ride the last, I guess now we're at 9 weeks since ChatGPT launched and people started to really pay attention. But Peter, thanks again for being here with me from London. Tell me a little bit about where you see this going. I mean, you're on the forefront here. You're working against the deepfake, community. You're working against the, how we can fake things with AI and with technology. Where do you see the next steps of this going? Like, where does the marketplace moving?
Well, in terms of the proliferation of content that's coming, the impact is going to, it's hard to even begin to describe it. And, I want to clarify that everyone's familiar with the Silicon Valley hype cycle.
Sure.
And I just want to be real. Like I said, I studied AI 30 years ago and way too soon. It took until I'm like practically dead for it to come into existence and really have an impact. But the reach of these generative AIs in terms of the impact they're going to have. For example, if you get into some of the communities, there was a guy who said, here's a ChatGPT that'll create a presentation for you. So you say, tell me, I did one, the history of pets in 7 slides. And it created a beautiful textual thing. And then I said, I'm going to take the text it generated for each slide and put that into an image generator, DALL-E, and see what images it comes up with. And in a few minutes, I had a beautiful presentation with images of pets during Egyptian times, pets during medieval times, pets during the Renaissance. And it would have taken me so much time to research that material and generate all those images, and I was done in 5 minutes. And that in terms of, if I could make a very nice PowerPoint presentation just by telling it what I wanted it to make. And then the guy who developed that Chat GPT for slides, he calls it, I commented on LinkedIn and he jumped in and said, oh, great idea. I love this because I posted that video on LinkedIn with a slide on LinkedIn. And so now he's actually working
integrate the two pieces together.
So it'll create the images automatically as well.
I was in a conversation last week or 2 weeks ago with a professor who said that she, in the last 6 weeks, has seen all papers and presentations are now A, every single one that comes from students. And she knows the reason for that. It's because of the emergence of these AI technologies. And instead of banning it, what I think she did is she just said, look, I'm going to just grade on that curve. The C was the average presentation before, but now we just move the average up and let's look at who did the right prompt engineering, who backed the research up, who did all of those kind of things. That's exciting and interesting. And I think it's what education has to do, is realize that we're merging together with technology. We have evolved separate from technology, and we have utilized it for 300,000 years. We are now merging with technology, and we have to understand how to grade on that curve. She also is using AI to grade all of the papers,
Oh, good.
right,
Nice
and to
one
rank them.
Class too.
Right, she's putting all 50 of those now Chat GPT generated papers in there and saying, grade all of these on a bell curve. I want 60% to be B's, and it's doing the whole thing for her. So we've got to learn how to do this. We've got to learn how to generate these prompts correctly. And what I keep warning friends of, particularly older friends, is if you aren't integrating into your workflow right now, AI, when the bell curve gets reestablished, you're done. You're just done. We've got to be thinking about as professionals, how do we integrate this into our life? And then we seriously need to be looking at what our people are doing and saying to ourselves, look, we've got to start integrating. Yeah. And I wouldn't, this isn't like, oh, let's build for the next year to integrate with Salesforce. No. This is trying things out and getting into a beta version cycle inside your business. Because if you try to build to ChatGPT, I don't know if ChatGPT is there in a year. We just don't know what's next.
Right. Derrick, there's a way I've been thinking about it that maybe helps people understand exactly why that teacher example you gave, why she's so smart. I mean, if you look at the history of technology, the first thing that we piped into our homes that was amazing was water, right? If you had water piped into your house, how much labor was avoided, right? And if you were a water carrier, you were out of a business. But you would find another as, the things evolved. Next came, I'll just jump to electricity. Talk about labor save. So let's say you're a company now that's like, this electricity stuff, it's just a fad. And then all your competitors are using electricity while you're still using horses. You're out of business. Okay. Now we've got data, or before we had data. The next big thing was data and information through pipes, which is the internet, early internet.
Yeah.
Right? Same thing. People are like, I don't know. I don't think that I really need that for my business. And then, 20 years later, their lunch was handed to them if they were Marriott or they were a taxi company or what have you by Airbnb and Uber. And what we have now reached is we're piping intelligence into people's houses. And it's an enabler. It's an augmenter, much like electricity made all these labor-saving devices behind me that I would have had to draw a fire to cook, and now there's a microwave back there, right? Yeah. And so if I were to ignore electricity and ignore internet access, I would clearly fall behind. And this is the same type of transition that we're making. This is not bad. This is a fundamental evolution, as you stated, where we are merging more with it, because this is a way now where we're piping intelligence as a way to augment our own intelligence and turn us into super productive.
Yeah. And let's talk about that for a minute. I mean, I said before we even started recording, there's a book, Life 3.0. If you haven't read it, I would suggest people read this book. This book was written in 2017, and it talks about AI and the next probably 100,000 years after AI reaches what's called a singularity. And we can talk about that singularity in a moment.
I have my thoughts.
I have some thoughts on singularity too, but one of the things that I really like about this book is the way that he sort of explains how things work, and I really took from that. I'm not sure I think he actually uses the analogy. I'm one of these kind of guys that I listen to things and then I turn it into my own, right? So he talks about fire in this book, and he says, look, fire is not something that anybody is trying to get rid of today. Like none of us are trying not to heat our food or warm our homes. But fire is extremely dangerous, extremely dangerous. It can destroy everything in seconds. It can kill you. So what did we have to do as a society in order to incorporate fire into everything that we do? Well, we had to create fire departments. We had to create fire extinguishers. We had to create fire suppression. We had to do all of these different things. We designed our world so that fire could become a part of everything that we do. We use it in our vehicles. We use it in just about every aspect of our life. We use fire.
Really
But
interesting.
we have walled it off in a way that we know that we can use it. And listen, sometimes we use it for destruction with forests and different things. But we've learned how to harness the power of fire. And that's exactly what we have to do with AI. And we have to be careful because singularity is something. It's even interesting in the book Life 3.0. He talks about how most scientists say, oh, a couple hundred years from now, AI will reach a level of singularity. Now I'm hearing people say, are we 10 years? Are we, where are we at?
I've heard 20.
Yeah, you think 50? Yeah, is that what you're thinking? 2050 or 50 years?
Actually, yeah. So I'm still,
and maybe we have to explain singularity too.
I'm not convinced yet that we won't find a way to put this in a box that it can't get out of. The dumbest thing I say that is the simplest way to understand it is just unplug it. Now that sounds, now you say, okay, it's going to seek out its own source of power at some point, but that's getting a little hard for me to believe. So I'm not, and I may not live long enough to know if I was right or wrong, but I'm not losing sleep over the singularity just yet, because I do think that, these, unless it can figure out how to source its own power, that's when I get.
That's a good point. Yeah. Well, let's talk about what singularity is for a moment, and I'll give my explanation. Maybe you can give yours. But I think singularity is essentially the moment where AI, and I think AI is becoming better at us than certain things. Right? It's becoming better at at content creation. It's maybe becoming better at legal. Like there's some things that are going on right now around that. It's becoming better at certain things. It's been better at playing chess. I mean, that was an early on one of the chess bots. But at some point, singularity is that at some point, AI just becomes better at everything than us. And then it starts to go down its own evolutionary path where it actually, we no longer are programming AI. AI is on its own going, here's the way that I'm going to go. And at that point, we have to think about the 3 million years of evolution in human history, how slowly that happened. That could occur in a moment if AI hits singularity because it has all of the background data. I mean, we talked about I don't know if we talked about it in the last show, that we are now at the point, if we had a smart enough AI, we could send it to Mars and it doesn't need much of anything. It could create stone tools. It could start to mine ore. It could refine it because it knows the process.
It knows history. It knows our history.
Yeah, it just looks at human history, but it can do it all in a weekend. This weekend, it's the Bronze Age. Next weekend, it's the Iron Age. The next weekend, it's the birth of the internet on the planet. It could do that, and that's what singularity has people a little concerned about is how do we control something that knows more about everything than we do? Maybe you have a different explanation of singularity, but that's the way that I sort of try to summarize it in a fifth grader's knowledge, I guess.
No, that's exactly it. I mean, it's basically the idea that there will be a point where machine intelligence exceeds human intelligence. And you point out, there's certain things, of course, machines are already better at. And is there a point where, I think it's called singularity because the idea is that we will kind of merge somehow with the computers and that we will become a single sort of intertwined, like life and technology. I mean, I kind of think of Borgs and, implants in your head or something like that. But I have to say that I do believe that machine intelligence and the ability of AI is clearly going to exceed, it already is, our capabilities. In terms of speed, the only thing it can't do really is innovate, because remember what machine learning and AI is all about is probabilities, and it's simply providing the most likely answer based on how everyone else has answered that question on the internet for the past 20 years, right? It has no knowledge of the future.
Right. And I guess that is a good question, though, because my question about AI and the singularity is, do we truly innovate, or do we just repurpose what's already there, right? Do we just extrapolate the next level of data? And I know that there's actually been some top secret stuff around AI where they've started to feed like research papers to it. And it's started to say, here's what you need to patent. But you got 5 years, right? Where it's actually saying, look, this isn't even something that's on the horizon just yet, but just based upon your trajectory, I am predicting with the data that this is the next step, this is the next step, this is the next step. So I guess the real question is there anything new under the sun? Are humans actually innovators, or are all we're actually doing is just extrapolating and finding the next step? And if that's what innovation is, then we got a bigger problem.
Oh no, I love this because I have literally had this conversation and I upset someone. I said, maybe, just maybe, what we're learning is that our human intelligence is just kind of like ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It's just a probabilistic model of what's the most logical thing to say based on all the times I've heard that before and all the ways I've heard people answer it before and all the ways I've answered it before. That's all ChatGPT is doing.
Yeah. Let off a firecracker in a
how
cloud.
Our brains work.
Yeah.
Because we started with neural networks modeling the brain. And then, so, I think my conclusion is this has provided insight on how we work.
I wonder if that's true because, the limbic, I'm a big fan. I do a lot of change management stuff in businesses, and I refer to the limbic system a lot. And I say, look, when we go to bring change into your business, I don't give logic as out the window. People will respond, fight, flight, freeze, or feign. Those are the 4 ways they're going to do. They're not going to do anything else. Those are the only 4 responses. So we have to prepare that when we make the announcement that other tribe members have already adopted this and they're shaking their heads so that my limbic system starts to go off. Okay. Other people in the tribe are okay with this, right? I mean, we have to get back to this lizard brain limbic system idea. And people that tell me, oh, no, humans are innovators and we're smart enough and we're logical enough, take a firecracker and throw it into a crowd of people that aren't preparing. You will see very, very quickly how we are not controlled by our conscious mind. Our unconscious mind is doing almost all the work. So, and that is what separates us from animals, right? I mean, we've advanced our cognitive abilities beyond them to that point. But what's the next level, right? I mean, I love this analogy of thinking about a very, very smart AI that reaches singularity. It has to speak to us like we're newborn children. Like it has to
be like, oh, you're a dumb.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's got to communicate on our level.
Talk down to us. So that'll be scary.
Right. Which is scary because think about how it could manipulate us in that situation. Because, talk about gullibility. We would be, from a probability perspective, we'd be hundreds of thousands of times more gullible than it would be.
I want to tie that into something. So literally, the other thing I'm doing right now is I just got hired by this crazy company that I adore called Mach 49, and they are basically, they're trying to help big corporations disrupt themselves before Silicon Valley does by doing the same thing that entrepreneurs do, setting up a skunk works and let them. And the thing that strikes me is just today we were talking about 8 psychological tricks that people use to manipulate people into buying stuff, because we're always trying to look at what is out there and it's a very idealistic, very honest, and they just want to do the right thing. And the opportunity for these companies, we mentioned it a little bit in the last podcast, but big corporations have all this data, the structured data that they've been structuring if they've been doing data science properly. And now that can be used to train specialty AIs that are really going to, that's where we're going to see some really amazing efficiencies introduced to these big corporates. And the ones that don't are going to get left behind. The AI will learn the same tricks that we all fall through, the trick of 9 out of 10 people recommend this, or some authority figure loves this, or it's, only 2 left, act now. Or if it's going
to learn these things.
It's going to know all that stuff because we invented it, and then it's going to just turn it on us.
And that's the scariest part. I mean, that's why I like this book, Life 3.0. And I like it that he wrote it before all this emergence, because he goes really detailed into what would society look like? What would space exploration look like? What will happen with things like, at some point, you mentioned about energy with AIs, at some point you've got to get beyond the E equals MC square stuff of our planet, the matter and the energy that's on, and you've got to start harnessing the energy of stars in order to create these super computers. I mean, we're talking about computers that are, dealing with quantum realities and different things like that. And that's coming. I mean, it is coming. And the funny thing is it might be closer than you think.
Well, quantum computing is for certain applications is a whole other ball of wax. But
it is.
Basically, the easiest way to understand quantum computing and to understand the potential impact, computers are on-off switch. It's 1011001011. Quantum is something between a 1 and a 0, and it can be multiple things at once, and it can be part 0 and part 1. And if you build a computer on that, you can understand how much more complex it can be so much more quickly. And I think these quantum computing machines, I don't know if their architecture lend themselves to AI, but they are going to be incredibly efficient at crunching numbers and drawing conclusions and other things like that. So, and maybe powering AI. I don't know.
It could be. There's actually a theory, and I want to make sure that this is not. I don't want this to be considered a scientific theory, but there is actually a theory among some researchers in quantum computers that actually what they're doing is that in the multiverse, other versions of ourselves are also creating quantum computers, and the reason the quantum computer is working so well is that it's actually harnessing the computing power of multiple dimensions inside the multiverse of the computers that are there as well. So it's essentially saying it's working. It's working so well because it's not actually what's happening. It's not the local operation. It is the operation that's occurring across all of the multiverses. And somehow by this quantum entanglement, that is connecting all of these multiverses together to harness the energy of multiple universes. Somebody told me that lately. I think they had smoked a little too much too at that point. But
I think we've all been there. But I think that there's a lot coming that's going to blow people's minds, and I think so as technologists, this is a very exciting time. Yeah. For us, it's surely gives us a lot to talk about and think about and work on, right? Yeah. And but people often don't want to think a few chess moves into the future in terms of what's coming as a result. And I'm not worried about this first generation. I'm more worried about what's going to be built on top of what's going to be built on top of what's going to be built on top of this generation of technologies. And you can see where we're at dial-up in AI. Yes. So think of trying to even conceive of Uber in 1995. So people didn't have you could, because all the building blocks, the ecosystem. There's a professor at Tuck, Ron Adner, who has this brilliant analysis about product sequencing and how products come to market. It's not about minimum viable product as much as it's a minimum viable ecosystem, right?
Boy,
and all those pieces, right? And he's a very fascinating guy, but he's
what is his name again? Just because that's
Ron Adner. A-D as in David, N as in Nancy, E-R. Sorry for the sirens.
No, that's okay. It's funny that you mentioned this about Ron Adner because I've been involved in multiple companies. Launched a metaverse way before metaverse. Launched blockchain chain technology way before I was that guy that was always involved in every idea that was way too early. I got introduced at a conference by a very well-known technologist who said, this is the guy who created Slack 10 years before Slack created Slack. And I was like, what did you mean by that? And he's like, remember your startup? And I was like, oh my God, I did create Slack. I forgot that I created that thing way back in the day. But you're right. It's the minimum viable, ecosystem is really what it is. It's not even about the product because the product can be in the wrong time. It can be in the wrong space. It's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time, which is more important.
Yeah. And that's really, I think, what MVE, minimum viable ecosystem, is about. It's about timing. Bill Gross did a study about the top companies of the last decade, or actually 2 decades ago. So this is a while back. This is around 2015. You can find it. He did a TED Talk about it. But anyway, he looked at 5 different factors. One was the amount of funding raised, the experience of the team, the depth of the technology, and other factors. The factor that correlated with success, number 1, was timing.
Yeah, totally true.
You can be early
I would
or late. And being right on time is really hard.
well, you can really predict it, right? Listen,
Right.
Peter Sisson, this was amazing. We're gonna just book another one. We got to book another one to just go off the loop, and maybe I'll bring another AI guy on here too, because I think we could go. I've held back a little bit on some of the theories that I have because I think they get a little crazy. But thank you so much for being on this episode of the Convergence. And
we have a crazy session next time. We can get even crazier.
We'll do, yeah, I think we got pretty crazy for this show, but we're going to do a crazier session the next time. Hey, everybody, thank you so much. Make sure you check out Peter Sisson and certifyit.org to find out more about how you can protect yourself against deep fakes and fake reviews, fake products, all of those kind of things. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to The Convergence. If you want more information about the topics you've heard here today, reach out to us at theconvergencepodcast.com.